Welcome to Brand Bank Build, the podcast about how to build a strong and sustainable finance and marketing mindset to grow your business.
I'm Terra, and I'll talk about all things branding and marketing.
I'm Karen, and I'll talk about all things finance and money. We'll overlap because we both have insights about how to grow a business, and we have over 25 years growing and advising business experience together.
This is exciting. So, we're going to do a short segment on each topic, a brand, bank, and build segment. You can listen to the whole thing, which I recommend, or skip to the part that's relevant to you. But let's get into today's episode.
Yes, Tara, but just before we get started, I need to put it out there that the information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered to be legal, tax, accounting, or financial advice. Always consult with a qualified professional before making any decisions about your business. So, today, our overall topic is about building a business during uncertain times because you know this, Tara. We've been in uncertain times for quite a while now, and therefore we wanted to address this topic. So, how did that show up in the brand space, Tara? Because, in my eye, the uncertain times has been since 2020 when COVID happened, and I don't think it seems to have stopped. So, where did that show up in the brand space?
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's getting more intense. I mean, we're based in, the Americas and Europe, and we're seeing news constantly about the crazy stuff that's happening. And it's really, really affecting marketing because a lot of marketing is happening on social media. And social media is not a fun place to be anymore because I go to social media and I see videos of people being killed, and I don't want that. And so I think a lot of people, especially now, like really recently, people are taking a step back from social media and trying to get more into real life. But what does that mean for social media marketing? It's getting really, really difficult. So I'm seeing a lot of that in marketing, and especially in social media marketing. It's a mess. It's stressful for everyone. It's stressful for the viewers, for the users of social media platforms, and it's stressful for businesses to know, is it appropriate for me to be posting today when this
And
horrible thing happened yesterday?
but
And
do you think it's impacting everyone? Do you genuinely think that, because we all have our own algorithms, right? We all live
yeah,
live in our own bubbles on social media. Do you think that this only affects certain people and only affects us, or do you think that social media has become a challenging place to be for everyone that's on there?
I think it's for everyone that's on there because of the algorithms. They have hyped it up so much on both sides or on all sides of issues. So whether you're a pacifist like me or not a pacifist like somebody else, like Karen, I think you and I are pretty aligned. Like I'm seeing content that's really disturbing to me, but the person who isn't a pacifist, for example, they're seeing content that's really disturbing to them. That's like, we got to go do this, we got to go do that, we got to, and so everybody's content is being really, really hyped up and amplifying just all kinds of stuff to keep us emotional because that's what
Mm-hmm.
keeps us on the platform. So the platform has that goal of keeping us there, and the way they do it is to get us more and more enraged or these extreme feelings. But like as I'm having all of these feelings and I'm scrolling through, I don't want to see a shoe ad. Like I'm just not in that headspace, you know? Like
Yeah.
so what do you do? Or like I've got some cool clients who are really arts oriented. Do people
Yeah.
want to see that? Like it's so interesting to be creating content, but also to be witnessing this transition as a person.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that there's potentially some brands out there that have no concept of that or have no inclination. And that's why I asked you the question, because I think that most brands and businesses that I've worked for, they don't reconsider what they're putting out there on social media because of what's happened in the world. They assume that their audience isn't necessarily being impacted by the same algorithm that they're seeing, for example.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why I wanted to talk about it, because for me, for a while, I assumed that what I was seeing was specific to me, and that potentially there's people that don't see a lot of the quite, emotional stuff that I'm seeing. But as you pointed out, one, their entire objective is to keep us on that platform. But two, what I've realized is that when there's key things, everybody sees it. And I like to keep it light, rather than talk about some of the, the aggressive things that we do see, or the things that we don't want to see. Is you take the viral instance of the Coldplay concert,
Yeah, let's
and
do that. Yeah.
how how everybody saw it, right? Because, and this is the thing that I think most brands forget, what I forget is that everyone across the planet saw that on social
Yeah.
media. You could have a conversation, like, I'm in Mexico now, you could have a conversation with someone in the UK. They knew what you were talking about. It was impossible to get away from. Now, it doesn't have to be one thing that goes viral, but if everybody's talking, or there's a lot of people talking about specific things, it will get pushed into your feed. And therefore, I don't think brands can be complacent about assuming that their audience isn't seeing the same things that they're seeing, being the high profile, I don't even know how to call it without, drama in the world, the high profile emotional
Yeah.
incidents that are happening in other countries, and not associate that with their audience, because I think that that's ignorance, and I think that that's keeping everything in a simplified terms, and that's where most brands are falling down. So I guess for for you sitting in this space, what do you think it looks like for a brand? Do brands need to acknowledge what's going on? Do they need to stop running ads? Do they need to, how aware, one, do they need to be, but how much do they need to change their strategy on the basis that people right now, you and I have both spoken about how we don't really want to be on social media sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
too it's too emotional, and
Mhm.
they are effectively turning into what I deem American used to be, which is to try and keep you in a state of panic for the majority of your day, where it used to be go onto social media to kind of distract from life, or like, take a break and watch some, look at photos of people's food and dogs and stuff, and that's no longer the case.
Yeah.
Now you accidentally see videos of people being killed on the other side of the world,
Yeah.
and let's call it what it is. So how do brands navigate?
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting because with something more neutral like the Coldplay incident, the Coldplay concert, there's an opportunity to be fun and playful and to bring that into your brand. And a lot of brands did that with their marketing. And even though it's completely irrelevant to their brand, it's just a chance to say, hey, we're in this with you. We're also on social media. We're also human. We're seeing the same thing you're seeing. Let's make it fun and whatever. So that was kind of a fun part of it. But with the other stuff that's happening, the more emotional, the more political stuff, I don't know, the bad stuff that's happening, this is a chance to reflect your values. And so I think if your values are about human rights and about something more than just making money, then you're going to reflect that not by being super obvious. You don't have to come out and make a statement, but maybe you just hit pause for a minute. You're not running ads. You slow down your social posts. You just kind of get a little more quiet and you can speak out. I think people are really looking for brands to take a stand on some things. And so you kind of want to consider if that's something that you want to do for your brand. But I think doing nothing and going about it as business as usual is going to lose a lot of customers and a lot of followers and a lot of respect. I mean, honestly, we do have to continue growing businesses. We have to continue making money, but I think we have to do it in an even more sensitive way and be compassionate about what your audience is experiencing when they're on social media, and also the values that you want to convey to your audience. So for a lot of my clients in the last couple of weeks, we kind of slowed down our social content and we hit pause on some things. I wrote some silly post about like my non-problems, and then something really bad happened to a country where I have friends who are from that country. And I was like, I am not going to post about my non-problems right now. Like, this is not an urgent issue. It was just going to be a funny thing. But I was like, this is so inappropriate right now. So I'm just not going to do that. So I think, to kind of wrap it up, I think people are looking even more for authenticity and compassion and not chasing the dollar, but just again, acknowledging that we're all human, we're all seeing this stuff. We don't need to talk about which side of whatever aisle we're on, but we all need to acknowledge that social media isn't the fun place that it used to be, and just kind of approach it sensitively. Does that?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Is it ever worth them calling that out in their brand? Depending on whether that fits into them, right? But if someone's in a business that is highly branded based on their values and, how they see the world, and again, not necessarily them sitting on a particular side of the fence, but more an acknowledgement of like, I know what you're seeing right now is not light and fluffy on here, but I still need to tell you about my business because I think that you're in the audience. Like, I don't know how to approach that, but is there a benefit to them even slightly calling out, knowledge, acknowledging where the audience is sitting or what they might be seeing?
That's what we're all looking for, right? Like, wouldn't you just be so comforted if you saw a brand that you respect say, hey, I know you've been seeing the news. I know it's rough. We're also struggling with it. We're having conversations within our team, whatever it is that you're doing, and then kind of gently approach. But it's really easy to border on being sleazy and being like,
Oh
but
yeah.
buy my shoes. Like what? So yeah,
And I think,
marketing is really hard
yeah.
right now.
Yeah, and I think that might tie well with, the trend that I've seen on the social media side, on the branding side, on the marketing side of business is that people having a persona can actually, like, one personality that is selling the business has a huge impact on the current audience. And I think it's because in moments like these, that one person on behalf of the business, like founders of businesses can speak out or say something and be like, hey, this is my, you know, not even this is my opinion, this is where I sit on the side of the fence, but this is happening right now. And I want to acknowledge that you're seeing it and I'm seeing it and I'm caught up by it. But, we're still out here making a business. You're still out here living life. So I'm going to talk to you about my coaching services, for example, and I think that maybe the strength comes sometimes in the brand space now. If you do have a personality, and I say a personality, not a fake personality, but an authentic persona that's out there that can talk about what's going on in a way that at least acknowledges that it's happening. When it's a big brand, it's kind of harder, I guess, to think how do we put that in? If we don't have that persona, how do we even tell people that we're thinking about it without just putting some words on a post? Or I remember shit like, again, we've had curveballs, but during 2020 with the black square that everybody put out
Yeah.
on their profile for Black Lives Matter,
Mhm.
There was an element of people are just putting this out to conform,
Yeah.
um, because there wasn't much authenticity around it for a lot of brands, but a lot of big brands took the bait and went and did it.
Yeah.
But they didn't have a persona to explain why they were putting it out there.
Yeah.
Um, and that was about someone dying across our screens too, people
Yeah.
dying across our screens. So I think that can be the lesson for a lot of people is look at that what that was not received well.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe the brands that have the persona are an advantage in the market that we're in like right now.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like in marketing, you want to attract your ideal client, right? People whose values align with your values. So if you offend people, you might be offending the right people. Like there are people that I clearly would not align with, and I would really struggle to do marketing for them to promote my services to people. And I mean, for physical products, it's probably not as relevant, but for some of our service-based products, it really is. And sometimes it's okay to be like, I probably don't want to work with people who are okay with some of the stuff that is happening. So that's why I think it's better to be honest and authentic. We don't have to come out and be super obvious. We can kind of phrase things, and that's why copywriting is so important and essential, but you can phrase things in a way that your audience says, I know exactly what she's talking about, and this is the kind of person that I
Mhm.
want to work with, because we use language in that way. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna admit marketing is really, really hard right now. It is a shit show, but there are ways to do it. I think we lean harder into authenticity and that, like, I see you. I know you're going through it. We're going through it too, but we have to stay in business, like you said. But where do you think this is showing up on the bank side of things, on the financial side, Karen? How is this uncertain times impacting founders and companies?
Oh, how is it not impacting them? So again, I liken it to having been the last 5, 6 years that we've been in a volatile, uncertain time across business, across the world. And that directly impacts businesses. And I've seen a lot happen in the last 5, 6 years, having worked in this space across multiple businesses. But lately, it's everything's changing every minute. So, we talk about the tariffs that are sometimes put in place, threatened to put in place, then they're in place, then they're back out of place. The prices of certain raw materials like gold, silver are changing dramatically from one week to the next, which if you're in the jewelry business or something along those lines, or any of your raw materials sit in that lane, then you're directly impacted by whether or not it works. Again, like I say, this has been ongoing for 5, 6 years in terms of, some countries being able to ship to other countries during the COVID times was a problem for a lot of people. But right now, like I say, everything is continuing to shift regularly and there's no predictability of it. Nobody knows exactly the decisions that are going to be made by some key people in the world, shall we say. So it's it's difficult. It's difficult because where it mostly comes up in my businesses is like, how do we price for this?
Mhm.
Right? How do we cover these weird costs that are coming into our business because we don't know whether they're going to be there, like the tariffs, for example. We don't know if they're going to be there forever
Yeah.
or whether or not they're going to apply forever for our particular zone or where we are in the world. And therefore they're questioning whether when those prices come in, when those tariffs come in, do we move our prices? Do we change our prices to accommodate that? Do we suck it up into our claw
Yeah.
and pay the additional tariffs, or do we push it on to our customers? where does that sit? And all of these decisions, a lot of the time, feel like they need to be made immediately,
Yeah.
right? I'm dealing with a lot of founders, a lot of CEOs that are constantly thinking, "Oh, we need to move right now." Like Trump's just taking a new tariff. It's for us. We need to change. We need to move.
Yeah.
Um, or he's talking about it, or there's there's talking about one country invading another country. That might particularly impact your logistics. It
Yeah.
might particularly, like, if something big is happening in Europe and your main market is Europe,
Mhm.
then anything, anything that you're doing might be impacted. So you need to consider. So a lot of the CEOs I'm dealing with are getting, let's say, vexed on needing to make a decision, even with only a fragment of information. So
Yeah.
they're, and it's natural in the startup, in the smaller businesses, people want to move quickly, think they need to be agile, and therefore they're constantly trying to make the decisions quickly and move fast because, and you and I both know this, Tara, the majority of the narrative out there on building a business and hustling and
Yeah.
growing and, locking in and going hard, it's all masculine, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all, and their recommendations would be, yeah, make the decision. You need to make that decisions in this market, otherwise you're not going to survive this market.
Yeah.
And I'm not disputing that. It's a very difficult market to be working with. But what I'm dealing with is a lot of CEOs feeling the need to make that decisions, push that onto their team in terms of stress, and everyone's flying by the seat of their pants to be nice about it. Terra is what I'm
Yeah.
seeing.
I mean, what's really frustrating is that you have these real, tangible decisions and things that you have to do in your business, but there's also this underlying stress that we're all feeling about, do I need to be responding to this? Should I wait on this? And like, there's just so much stress right now.
Mhm.
And that's where we get to connect with people and say, I'm feeling it too. We're trying to do the best we can and honor you and honor this space that we're all in. I mean, that's the more feminine approach to it, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, the more feminine approach is one to tell people what's going on rather
Yeah.
than just make snap decisions in your business,
Yeah.
to hold people, especially like your leadership team or whatever, hold people in that moment. But, and this is going to be against all of the narrative that probably goes into business, but my recommendation in this market for people is to pause and take a breath. So when a new tariff comes in, or the cost, like when the tariffs came in the first place, a lot of people scrambled,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people, I mean, let's just talk about the craziness that happened in the tariffs were put in with no paperwork, with no jurisdiction, with no, this is how it's going to work. So every business decided to try and figure out what it would look like on their side, and needed to, they're quite rightly trying to protect their customers, but a lot of people decided to just like maybe up their prices. Even if it hadn't come in, they were just like, yeah, okay, let me just up our prices to cover this potential cost. Like we need to cover those tariffs. So my recommendation is, rather than making snap judgments, snap movements in a market that's moving like this, pause and take a beat. Consider what your options are, look at some data, maybe even speak to your audience. I know that's a crazy one, but like think about what's going to sit well with your brand, because people are destroying their brands right now by just passing on costs that they weren't expecting to their customer. And that's not a great business move. It's not a good experience for customers. It's not a good brand look. I know we're talking pricing, we're in the bank section, but it ties into brand.
Yes.
But yeah, some of these movements can be quick, but then they change again within like a week. So you've just annihilated your entire audience by passing on a cost to them that no longer exists.
Yeah. Because you're not going to lower your price. We know that. Nobody,
We've seen
nobody,
it.
the price of phones went up because of tariffs, and then the prices didn't come down. I saw a phone for sale the other day for 1,800 euros. Give me a freaking break. That's more expensive than my laptop. Anyway, one really cool move I saw a business do related to tariffs was they added a line item to the cart, and it was one that you couldn't
Okay.
remove, and it was called tariff. And that way, that when the tariffs go away, they're going to remove that line item from the cart. They didn't just up their prices 10% on all their products and not be transparent. I mean, they were more transparent about it. They were like, we can't absorb this cost. We're going to pass it on. It's not even the full cost. But I think that move created a lot of trust with their audience, because then their audience
Mhm.
could see, okay, this is clearly why they've raised their price. And when that price isn't in effect anymore, they can take it off globally. I mean, that was a really cool move. And I hope more brands do stuff like that, because that's a program, like that's a 20-minute job. Yeah.
That's the thing, though. I think that because people were making snap decisions, they weren't thinking through all the consequences. They were just like, oh, everyone's going to understand if we increase our prices right now because everybody knows that the tariffs are put in place. So one, they didn't communicate it, they didn't consider it, they didn't think through that option. And I know you've told me about that example before, and I think it's genius because personally, I don't believe that if there's an increase in tariffs, for everybody listening, tariffs are a fancy new branded way of saying taxes and duties.
Yeah.
It's not anything other than another duty that needs to be paid. We're calling it tariffs because we like to brand things differently, and certain people in the world have particular ways to brand things to make it sound crazy. But it's tariffs, it's duty, it's
Yep.
cost that we're already paying in your business. You're already paying taxes and duties in your business. It's just
Yeah.
this is increased them.
Right.
In the normal business circumstances, you're supposed to absorb those additional
Mm.
costs that have come into your business. If the cost of your goods go up, you're supposed to absorb that, or you can adjust your pricing.
You factor it
Adjusting
in.
your
Yeah.
pricing, like, and just putting that on and making the snap decision, which is what people did, can alienate your entire market. And that's what happened. And taking a minute to think, well, actually, can we put it out in this way, like the brand that you spoke about did, where it's very transparent and we're adding it on. And a lot of people didn't take a beat to think about that. However, most businesses knew that those tariffs weren't things that were going to come in forever.
Yeah.
They knew that they were going to be temporary. They know
Yeah.
by the person that's making those decisions, they know that he changes his mind left, right, and center. So they knew before everybody knew when they took them in, it was going to be like a temporary tariff here, there, and everywhere. Now, we didn't predict that it was going to move as much as it has, but it's a volatile, like, political situation that is resulting in these tariffs, and they're changing consistently. So to me, it's a no-brainer if you can't absorb it, and you need to be transparent about it. You can't just increase, because if the tariff is 30% one week and then it's 100% in 2 weeks time, again, you're just going to increase the price again, and you don't adjust it back down, and there's so many brands doing that where they just increase it, never bring it back down, and like customers are left paying additional costs for things that they wanted, because all of a sudden brands are thinking, oh, well, they paid this price now, so that's now our new standard. But
Right.
they've paid that price on the understanding that tariffs are impacting everybody across, and they're being understanding about the market that you're in. But then when you don't bring it back down, the clued on consumers, the ones that are paying attention to what's happening with the tariffs, will understand that you've just not taken it back down. And you've decided that you want that, like, because tariffs or taxes, they're not optional costs, but they're also not, it's not something that you should be making money from. These are things that you take and
Yeah.
pass on, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
sales tax. You charge it because you're governmentally bound. You're legally bound to charge the sales tax, and then you
Yeah.
pass it back to the revenue
Yeah.
company, whichever one in your country. And this is exactly that. Like this is something that you need to pay because it's a tax in your business. It's not optional, but you shouldn't profit from it.
Yeah.
It's like someone charging like a higher sales tax than its jurisdiction in that particular state, for example. Like in some states, they have higher sales tax than another.
Yeah.
And if they then say they charge 20% sales tax across the whole of the state, and they took the additional, that's what they're doing by increasing their prices to keep these tariffs going and then not bringing them back down. What effectively they're doing is they're profiting off of a tax, which in my eyes is unethical, not good business, terrible. Like even taking out the customer impact, that's just it's the worst financial decision you can make. Oh
Yeah.
wow, I just called that out. Yeah, it's the worst financial decision you can make because you're profiting off of taxes, and that's not like it's different when it's the price of your goods increasing. That we can have a conversation about, like the
Yeah.
price of silver skyrocketed, and that impacts like your your product. But with tariffs, if you're sitting there, if you're in my audience right now and you've increased your prices to cover a tariff that no longer exists, you are doing bad business.
For sure. For
That's
sure.
it.
Well, what's the build? Let's wrap this all into build.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think
So
both of us,
basically,
yeah, on both sides, we're saying take a breath, pause, don't
okay.
make snap decisions, maybe have a backup plan or plan B, or just kind of consider where things might go in a minute, because things are changing quickly with the tariffs
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But I think for both of us, we're saying things are wild out there, slow down, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's going to be a new curveball tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But also, like, consumers are going through this too. So if you double your prices, consumers' wages didn't double along with those tariffs. So we can't pay that anyway. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of financial sense to be going along with
Yeah.
the tariff chaos. But
Yeah.
that's the case in all of the stuff that we're talking about. Like, social media marketing is hard because your customers are also in social media having a hard time with it. You're having a hard time. Like, we're all in this crazy soup together, and we have to be more compassionate on both sides. And I think, like, for the finances, right? We want to invest in long-term trust. And we do that by slowing down, taking a breath, not reacting, right?
Yeah. I think the slow down piece and the not being super reactive to the curveballs that happen in the current market is what I would highly recommend. And I may have multiple finance people that come at me in the comments for that because that's not necessarily what's recommended by most of my counterparts. But I think that sitting and looking at the data and considering your options is way better than moving quickly and making crazy decisions based off one piece of information. And like you say, I think the second part in this, not just to slow down, is consider that everybody is going through it. It's not just your business. And that's not to say, I know most businesses are like, oh, they'll look to see what other businesses are doing, for example. And they acknowledge that other businesses are having to deal with this thing. What they don't always remember, and this is depending on how close they are to their customers or not. And the thing that we speak about a lot is knowing your customer and actually being close to your customer and being able to talk to your customer about what's happening. And that's easier sometimes in smaller businesses, I think, or more like our businesses, but you can speak to or think about, oh, my customers are being impacted by this, not just from my business, but they're being impacted in general, right? Like their prices are not just going up in my business, they're going up everywhere. They're
Yep.
also like, for example, and not to get too fancy on us all, but the reason that the price of silver and gold are increasing is because the dollar is is forecast to become weaker. And most people, when they're kind of looking for stability in their investments, they put money in the dollar. And when the dollar is expected to be less strong because people have less faith that the dollar is actually, because there's a lot of decisions that are impacting the strength of that currency, they go to the fundamentals in investment, which is gold and silver, which are the things that in their head will never change their value. So that's where those prices change. And that's what's happening in the market. Now, in these types of markets where the dollar in itself is weakening, pretty much everyone in the world feels that because it impacts people's investments, but it also impacts the greater economy and like how, what, like what inflation looks like, what the decisions are that are being made between countries and their, because yeah, there's a macroeconomic to all of this. Impacts everybody. It impacts everybody that's sitting in their chair. And people have, as I haven't called out on this episode, but let's be clear, we've been dealing with uncertainty for 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
Certainly within the last few years, inflation rates have been high. In that field, what happens is not just there's high unemployment, but people have less disposable income. So considering, when I say considering where your audience is and what they're being impacted by, it's also considering why there might be a reduction in demand, why they might be not, it's not easy to get them to part with their money at this point in time. I think any business that's fit from the like nice to have space should have already seen that. But sometimes there's a huge disconnect from the people that run the business and why their sales are going down. And I see it all the time where I have to remind them and say, hey, yeah, not many people are buying those flights at the moment because they don't have that extra money to pay for a holiday. And while they might have been surviving for a few years, kind of like, continuing to put things on credit card and like hoping that it all gets better, we're way past that point. Like we're now at the point that people have not just been forced to look at saving or getting by. Any savings that they've had are gone in the last few years because we've been dealing with this uncertainty and this bad economic situation for 5-6 years. It's not, yeah.
Yeah, I talked to a florist just last week who had to close her business because the fixed cost of her rental space went up, but discretionary income has not gone up. So she's out of business and she's like, I'm taking my business online. And I'm like, how do I buy flowers from you on? Like, I just can't. But anyway, it's really sad because it's affecting small business owners, I think, more heavily than some of the others.
I think for sure it's affecting small businesses. If you're not someone that's looking at company reports and investment prices and like stock prices, then you might well think that it's only impacting small businesses, but it's impacting everybody. Because there's brands that you would know that their revenue has gone down, and the revenue has gone down because spending overall is down. And again, I'm not going to get into the economics of what happens when spending is down, but that affects interest rates and all that jazz. But yeah, I think that small businesses are really paying the price, which is why a lot of the businesses that you and I deal with, when I see them growing their revenue in a market like this, I'm like, you have no idea what you're achieving right now, right? Like,
Mhm.
if you're growing in this market, if you're managing, if you're managing to survive in some markets is like beyond. But if you're growing in a market in this current economic climate, which again has been ongoing for like quite a few years,
Yeah.
then you're doing something right. I had a
Yeah.
conversation I had a conversation with a not-for-profit here in Mexico the other day, and they've taken a huge hit to their donations or their income in the
Mhm.
last sort of year. But it's understandable because again, that's one of the first things to go with your
Yeah.
discretionary income. If you're making a donation, that's going to be something that you scale back on. Now, again, that's
Yeah.
the type of thing that you might let hang for like a couple of years or like 6 months longer than you want because you're a good person. You want to keep donating to that cause. But when
Mhm.
push comes to shove, if you've got nothing else to give, that's one of the things that you're going to cut down on. So, not for profits being one of them, their income is not so steady in this market, and they have to therefore adjust all of their business as a result, and not business, but their expenditure. And there's less that they can do. But a lot of not for profits, again, in this market, haven't necessarily adjusted, haven't thought about why
Yeah.
their donations are going down. They've just thought, oh, they're going down. We have to fundraise harder. We have to do this harder,
Right.
which I'm saying this as a reflection of what normal businesses are also doing. And it's like, yeah, but like there's a reason it's not landing. There's a there and you might just need to adapt currently to what's
Yep.
happening rather than assume that you can grow the revenue again. Assume because staying flat is actually like from a revenue basis is actually still challenging to do right now. So
Yeah.
all that being said, to say think about what your customers are dealing with, not
Yep.
just how businesses are handling these big changes.
Yeah. And the build, takeaway from this is to move slowly right now. And it's hard to move slowly. We get that. We agree. But it's really essential. And the reason that we wanted to have this conversation is because we know that your business is important. I have a funny story
Mhm.
about a tattoo. I think that kind of illustrates this. So, a couple of years ago, I was really struggling with seeing things on Instagram and LinkedIn and whatever. And I was doing social media marketing for a company. And I was like, this horrible thing is happening in the world that I care about. And my job is to write LinkedIn posts. I can't even handle this right now. Like, I feel so worthless, so pointless. I hate this. And then I came across on Instagram, an artist had drawn something really cool. And she said, we must hold it all in our hearts at the same time. The joy, the anger, the love, the sadness, all of it. Because we can't just give up on everything because we're sad. We have to hold all of it in our hearts at the same time. And I was like, ah, this is exactly the message I need because I have to keep going, even though I see all of these terrible things. I can't give up. I have to promote this business. They're important. So I went to get this art tattooed on my arm because I'm like, I need to look at this message every day and remember that we must hold it all in our hearts at the same time. And as I was getting the tattoo, I was thinking, I bet this tattoo artist feels pointless and worthless when this horrible thing is happening. Like, what's the purpose of her business right now? Like, what's the point of a tattoo artist when these things are happening in the world? But for me, that tattoo was so healing. So her business was important to me. I needed her in that time. So like all of the you might not be a tattoo artist or a marketing expert, but like all of us are important and we're all giving something to someone who needs the thing that we're giving. So that's why we have to balance all of this and go a little slower. I'm glad you said that, like, if you're just living right now, you're just kind of making the minimum, balancing
Existing,
your
yeah.
books. You're doing great if you're balanced. balancing your books. Yeah, because it's all hard right now, but it's all important. Like all of our businesses are important. So I hope I summed that up
I think you
nicely.
summed it up perfectly, Tara, because what we're saying is building a business during uncertain times is hard, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible. And if you move slower and give everybody more grace in this period, including yourselves, the likelihood is that you'll be able to continue to build your business for a long period of time. And that's it's like holding out rather than rushing and racing to the finish line because, and I hate to say this, but I don't think it's stopping anytime soon. I think this is just where we're going to be. And if we stress ourselves out by being super reactive and fast and not considering everyone, then the business in itself will suffer and probably, not work. So you're saying our businesses are important. They're very important because they are our livelihoods, but they are our purpose. And we want to continue them going
Yep.
forward. And we need to, especially as the market moves like this. This is what we need to do. And people need our services. So we just need to be smarter, slower, more careful. But there's ways to navigate these uncertain times that do not look like hustle, grind, lock in. There's ways to navigate that actually make more sense for the current uncertain climate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe the feminine approach is what works right now.
Dare we say it, Tara? Dare we say
Oh,
it? What? I
doesn't
genuinely
that
believe that to be true.
doesn't that just connect to our last episode about women and the power of
Does.
women and how creative we are and the empathy and all? Oh, okay, that's another
Well,
episode.
yeah. Yeah, that's another. I think what we have, well, a reminder to any of the men listening, again, it's
Yeah.
not an attack on men and how they work, but a lot of what's happening at the moment is coming from a masculine energy, is like the decisions that are being made about war, tariffs, country disputes. That is very much strong-willed, aggressive, masculine tone.
Yeah.
And the reason that women exist is we have an ability to diffuse
Yeah.
that. We have
Yeah.
ability to diffuse and soften the masculine energy. Whereas if you get men together, as you can see, it's happening in the world, is like there's more conflict, more drama, more changes, more volatility if you bring the masculine to the masculine in those circumstances, right? And
Yeah.
as a result, that's one argument for why we sit in the feminine around the business side, because that's the only way to soften the impact is to bring in an element of slowness, consideration, to bring in that feminine energy. And it's not to say that all the men in the up need to all become super feminine, but consider how things might look differently rather than reacting in your natural stance, because there's the polarization of masculine and feminine is that there's a reason that feminine energy is there, and it's to diffuse situation like this. So dial in or yeah, dial into that in your business, and you might navigate through this uncertain time better than if you just keep going hard and trying to bring conflict, if that makes sense.
Very cool. Okay, well, I liked this new format of like the brand for 15, the bank for 15, build for 15. I think this is a really cool way to discuss all of these topics. So thanks, Karen.
Yeah. And if you're sitting in the audience and you have particular brand topics, particular build topics, or back topics that you want us to discuss, throw them in the comments, send us a message on LinkedIn, and we will discuss them in the next episode. I'm super excited for that. I love the format too, Terra.
Yes, good. Thanks, Karen. Bye.
Bye. See you next time.